Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Evelyn Lee and here are today's top stories. Your kids may have gotten vaccinated at school without your knowing it. That is if you live in Washington, D.C. Parents there are furious and are suing the district over its vaccine law. The Biden administration is facing intense criticism for working with big tech to remove content they deem misinformation. NTD speaks with a Facebook whistleblower and a former U.S. acting attorney general to get their take. A culture war at the University of Notre Dame. A restaurant will be allowed to open despite pushback from some students. And a U.S. senator says that's a big win in the fight against cancel culture. Catastrophic flooding in Belgium and Germany has claimed the lives of at least 120 people. With over 1,000 still missing, search and rescue teams race to find survivors as the death toll continues to rise. A large group of spiritual practitioners from all over the U.S. joined together in a rally and parade at the nation's capital. They're calling for an end to the Chinese Communist Party's persecution against the Falun Dafa spiritual practice. Washington, D.C. is facing a lawsuit over its vaccine law. The district is allowing kids as young as 11 to get vaccinated without parental consent. NTD's Ellison Lee has the latest.
4 parents in D.C. filed a federal lawsuit on Monday. They argue that D.C.'s vaccination law is reckless, unconstitutional, and needlessly endangers children's lives by stripping away parental protection. D.C.'s latest amendment to its minors' vaccination law came into effect in March. It states a minor 11 years of age or older may consent to receive a vaccine if the minor is capable of meeting the informed consent standard. And not only that, the law also asks vaccine providers and medical insurers to intentionally hide a child's vaccination record from the parents. It states providers who administer immunizations under the authority of this subsection shall seek reimbursement without parental consent directly from the insurer. Insurers shall not send an explanation of benefits for services. If a minor student is utilizing a religious exemption, but the minor student is receiving vaccinations, the healthcare provider shall leave blank Part 3 of the immunization record. The school shall keep the immunization record received from the healthcare provider confidential. The parents point out the potential risks to children's health. They say if parents do not know their child was vaccinated at school, they may not recognize vaccine adverse reactions. Serious adverse reactions require immediate medical treatment and are contraindications to further vaccination. And if family doctors don't know the child received certain vaccines at school, they may administer additional shots too close in time. The parents are asking the court to stop D.C. from enforcing the law. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Senator Lindsey Graham is declaring a big win. That's after Notre Dame allowed a Chik-Fil-A to open, even though some students and staff opposed the owner's religious positions. NTD's Kevin Hogan brings us the details.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said he'd go to war for the principles Chick-fil-A stands for. He's referring to a dispute at the University of Notre Dame where students and faculty signed an open letter to the school. In it, they opposed the school's decision to consider opening a Chick-fil-A on campus. Opponents took issue with what they call Chick-fil-A's anti-LGBTQ+ activism. But the Catholic University said it examined Chick-fil-A's prior donations and found them satisfactory. It went on to say that students overwhelmingly expressed their desire for the restaurant and that the school looks forward to opening one early next year. Graham calls this a big win in the fight against cancel culture, a phenomenon that some say is meant to silence anyone who disagrees with woke politics. Chick-fil-A had donated to 2 Christian organizations, the Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. These 2 have been criticized for being anti-LGBTQ. In 2019, the restaurant stopped these donations and instead donated to groups that focus on homelessness, education, and hunger. In February, New York University cut ties with Chick-fil-A over a similar issue. Graham says he hopes NYU will follow Notre Dame's lead. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
And a Democratic congresswoman was arrested for leading a group of protesters into the Senate office building. She and a group of people were demonstrating over state and federal election laws.
Democrat Representative Joyce Beatty was arrested for leading protesters into the Hart Senate office building Thursday. Beatty and the other protesters appear to be demonstrating against election integrity measures passed in the Republican Senate legislatures. Beatty released a statement saying she's standing with black women to defend their rights to vote. She celebrated her arrest on Twitter, posting a message saying, "Let the people vote, fight for justice." The Capitol Police confirmed the arrest on Twitter. They say they arrested 9 protesters who ignored 3 warnings to stop. Republicans and Democrats have been in a bitter dispute over election laws since before the last presidential election. Democrats claim Republican-led voting bills are designed to suppress minority votes. Republicans say they're to make elections more secure and to restore the public's confidence in elections. Democrats in the House passed a bill to dramatically remake election laws from the federal level. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says the bill allows Democrats to rewrite the election laws of all 50 states.
And the Department of Energy is moving to put stricter limits on the water flow of your shower heads. It's reversing a Trump-era rule over water efficiency standards. During the Trump administration, the Energy Department changed how they interpret a congressional rule from the 1990s. The rule says shower heads can allow at most 2.5 gallons of water flow per minute. The Obama administration said that number applies to the whole fixture, but the Trump administration changed that to each shower head, since there are fixtures with multiple shower heads. Now Biden's proposal will go back to the interpretation under Obama, but there will be a 60-day period for the public to comment. And the devastating floods across western Germany and Belgium have now claimed the lives of over 120 people, and the death toll keeps rising. Search and rescue teams continue to look for over 1,000 more. NTD's Eddie Aitken has the story.
More than 1,000 people are missing in flood-stricken regions of western Germany and Belgium on Friday. Waters are still rising, as is the death toll. Entire communities lie in ruins after swollen rivers swept through German towns and villages, like here in the village of Schuld.
It was terrible not being able to help people. People were waving at us from windows. Houses were collapsing to the left and right of them.
Over 100 people are reported dead in Germany's worst mass loss of life in decades. In Erftstadt, several houses collapsed on Friday morning, and authorities fear more casualties. Roads around the town were impassable after being washed away. Rescue crews tried to reach residents by boat and helicopter. Over 100,000 households are without power on Friday, and mobile phone networks collapsed in some regions. Authorities worry that dams could overflow or even burst, spilling uncontrolled floods onto communities below. Armin Laschet, one of the candidates to succeed German Chancellor Merkel, is at center stage as governor of North Rhine-Westphalia, where over 20 towns and districts took extensive damage.
Our state is experiencing a flood disaster of historic dimensions. We will repair houses, rebuild bridges, repair traffic routes, but the lives lost in the floods are irreplaceable.
In Belgium, over 20 are reported dead as several towns and villages are submerged.
I saw the 1957 floods. It was not as impressive as this. This is unheard of.
The flooding in Belgium caused transport chaos with embankments of train lines washed away. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.
And we've seen home invasions and reports of people missing in Cuba since the protests took off. The sister of an arrested American resident tells NTD's Miguel Moreno that they've gotten no word of his safety for days.
Sacrifices are being made in Cuba to protest the communist dictatorship. You could be arrested indefinitely for protesting.
We don't know anything. We're very desperate. We've contacted a lot of people.
Sarielis Sintra de la Cruz lives in Florida. She says her brother, Sadiel Sintra de la Cruz, was arrested on Sunday for protesting, and they haven't heard from him since. Sarielis says her brother is a U.S. resident, born in Cuba. He's been on the island, she says, for about 2 months. Have the Cuban authorities contacted your family, told them how he's doing or when they'll let him go?
No. On Sunday, after 1, he hasn't responded to our calls. We started to worry. We grew anxious because of the protests, what's happening in Cuba. We started to call relatives. Nobody would respond. He wouldn't respond. Something very odd because he always responds to our calls. So we spent what was Sunday in uncertainty. And on Sunday morning, a police officer, who we call in Cuba the sector chief, went to my brother's house to inform his parents that he was detained.
They don't know if Sadiel is dead or alive. Human rights organization Cubalex reports that between July 11th and 13th, 148 people were arrested or disappeared. 12 were released. We contacted them for an update, but we haven't heard back. Sadielis says she wants the U.S. to step in.
That the U.S. government takes some action because many people are dying, and they're not just Cubans, also American citizens and American residents.
Louisiana teacher Jonathan Koppel is compiling a list of U.S. citizens and residents whose relatives or friends report missing. Koppel says he hopes to convince the Biden administration to take military action. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Today, a large group of people from all over the U.S. gathered at the nation's capital. They're calling for the Chinese Communist Party to stop persecuting the spiritual practice Falun Dafa. A group of human rights and religious freedom activists spoke about why Americans should be aware of this issue and oppose it. NTD's Melina Weisskopf was there at the rally, and she brings us more details.
Here in Washington, D.C. today, a large group of around 1,500 people marched in a parade to raise awareness about a brutal persecution that's been going on in China for 22 years against an ancient spiritual discipline called Falun Gong. This large group that you see behind me just marched from the Capitol building all the way down to the National Monument in hopes to raise awareness and put an end to the persecution.
Practitioners of Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, believe in the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. They also practice peaceful meditation exercises.
And it really hits home because you don't know what's so much ingrained in you, but it's more inner. What could I do to be a better person in this society?
But since July 1999, Falun Gong practitioners in China have faced inhumane treatment from the CCP. They've been imprisoned, brutally tortured, even had their organs harvested while they're alive, just for their faith in these values.
Their ultimate goal is to destroy humanity, to destroy the human race.
This woman and her husband were both arrested in 2001. She was jailed 4 separate times while her husband faced an 8-year sentence. Sadly, he died in a hospital just 13 days after he was released. His body was irreversibly damaged from the torture he faced. He never even got to spend time with his only daughter.
So I just saw my father like twice. So she says this will stop. She believes it must stop, and it will. And that's because good will always triumph over evil.
Ending this persecution is a priority for this family and tens of millions of Falun Dafa practitioners around the world. Some U.S. government officials have joined their call to action.
To expose the CCP's abuses and to impose targeted sanctions against Chinese officials and entities responsible for religious freedom violations.
After a number of speeches, the spiritual practitioners lined the streets of D.C. to raise awareness to those passing by.
I think it's a good thing, actually. I'm all for, stopping the human rights abuse in China, so I'm kind of with them on that. So I kind of felt some solidarity.
Well, for myself, I didn't realize it, so I just say we need to become more aware of the fight that's going on over there, and try to assist them, America, as best we can, because we're supposed to be a Christian nation and freedom of religion, so any other country that needs freedom of religion, we should support.
Falun Dafa practitioners have hosted this parade every year since 2001. Each year, their calls to end the persecution grow stronger. They look forward to the day when practitioners in China will no longer be persecuted for their faith. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Foreign journalist and author Geoffrey Kane has published a book that takes the reader inside the Xinjiang region of China. He says the surveillance and data collection is so intense that people are arrested if someone believes they may commit a crime in the future. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Foreign correspondent Jeffrey Kane just released a new book called The Perfect Police State, an undercover odyssey into China's terrifying surveillance dystopia of the future. Kane conducted hundreds of hours of personal interviews with Uyghurs who escaped Xinjiang. Kane also visited Xinjiang several times. He explained what it was like during his last visit in 2017.
Really a terrifying experience because I realized that, that I and also, people who I was kind of interacting with, we were all being watched 24/7 by a pretty novel artificial intelligence system that was set up by the Chinese government. It was called the IJOP.
The IJOP stands for Integrated Joint Operations Platform. It's a type of surveillance system used by the Chinese regime. They collect information like text messages, camera data, how much electricity you use, and even which door you use when you leave your house.
When you go into the market, there will be government cameras watching everyone, watching what they purchase. So if you purchase something like diapers for your babies, the AI system might raise your trustworthiness ranking. It says that you're more trustworthy because that means you're a good parent. But, if you go to a section like the alcohol section and you're buying, whiskey or whatever, beer, your social trust ranking might go down. You might be considered untrustworthy because it means you have some kind of problem or you're just not, something's wrong with you.
Kane describes what might happen to someone who is deemed untrustworthy.
You'll leave, and let's say you go to the gas station. There will be people scanning their IDs to get gas. They scan their government IDs. There will be guards surrounding them, watching them as they scan their IDs. And if somebody's ID pops up and says untrustworthy, that's your ranking based on everything you've done, you could be denied gas. You're not allowed to go to the gas station anymore and get gas there. And the guards the police might come in and just detain you and send you to a concentration camp if your ranking falls that low, because it means that you might commit a crime in the future.
This label can have immediate and drastic effects.
You might wake up to someone who's actually, like a government minder in your bed who was sent to replace, say, your husband or your partner who had been taken away to a concentration camp. And you might, you'll wake up. There will often be a camera in your living room. You can eat breakfast with your children. This minder will ask you questions and teach you lessons and just ensure that your thinking is in line, that you're not committing some kind of thought crime against the state.
He says even though the U.S. has the same technology in its military and police, the data can't easily be used in such extreme ways. That's because the U.S. is not under a one-party system. Kane believes cybersecurity should be a top priority. That's why he stores important information on a secure USB instead of uploading it to the cloud. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And this just in, a federal judge in Texas has ruled Daca to be unlawful, putting pressure on Congress to make a permanent solution for undocumented youth. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program was put in place by former President Obama in 2012. But this nuanced ruling doesn't impact young adults who are already protected under Daca. Judge Andrew Hanen says the Department of Homeland Security can keep accepting new applications and renewals for Daca recipients, but temporarily they cannot approve these requests, effectively stopping new applicants for now. Up next, the Delta variant continues to spread in New York City, but the mayor says it doesn't seem to be too dangerous. And the largest annual North American auto show is back after missing a year in lockdown. We'll hear what the crowd is saying about what brought them to this year's show after the break. The Delta variant makes up more than 2/3 of all virus cases in New York City. The New York Yankees even postponed their game against the Red Sox yesterday because of a spike in cases. NTD's Ariane Pastar has the story.
Lockdowns or no lockdowns, masks or no masks. It's been a constant back and forth for almost 18 months now. After the vaccine rollout, we've seen cities across the US opening up, basically getting back to normal, right? Now, though, it looks like some places are retreating. People in LA, for example, have to wear face coverings indoors again, even if they're vaccinated. The 7-day average of COVID cases doubled from 200 a month ago to 400 now. Half a year ago, that number stood at 6,400. We asked New Yorkers how they feel about the case number going up. Are you worried about it?
Yeah. I'd like some guidance from the CDC and some leadership on it.
People don't seem to be learning their lesson, unfortunately.
Well, I have my mask with me. I'm fully vaccinated, but I'm still worried about it because it's still out there.
But the city's mayor doesn't seem to be worried. He made clear it's not the case number we have to follow.
Look, hospitalization is the indicator that tells us if folks are having serious experiences, negative experiences with COVID.
He added that the hospitalization rate stands at around 0.3 per 100,000 residents. New York City's mayor isn't making a big fuss about the recent spike in cases. But over in Washington, President Biden is reviewing the federal mask mandate for public transit, and he might even extend it. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
And as the West Coast continues its battle with drought and wildfires, one newly ignited blaze is drawing attention. The Dixie Fire erupted on Wednesday in California and is edging close to a town that's still rebuilding from a 2018 firestorm.
The Dixie Fire has charred over 2,200 acres in its first 24 hours. Some 500 personnel battled the blaze, which was spreading across a steep, tree-filled terrain about 85 miles north of Sacramento. It started in Butte County, California, near the mountain town of Paradise. The town is still rebuilding from a 2018 fire that killed 85 people and destroyed nearly 19,000 structures. The Dixie Fire is only one of 70 major active wildfires burning in 11 states. That's according to the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. The so-called bootleg fire in southern Oregon ranks as the largest by far. It was also the 6th largest on record in Oregon since 1900, according to state forestry figures. On Thursday, hand crews backed by water-dropping helicopters struggled to suppress the huge wildfire that displaced roughly 2,000 residents. One Portland firefighter explains what makes tackling these large blazes so challenging.
You have so much heat and so much intensity that plume raises, and it's just billowing smoke. And in that smoke is all this heavy particulate firebrands. That's how you see spotting up to several miles, etc. Well, as that's building throughout the day, the sun sets, the temperatures go down, and all of a sudden that fire can no longer support that billowing tower, that plume. So it oftentimes will collapse all at once. So you get this 5 square mile plume that's 40,000 feet in the air that comes crashing down, because now that it's not being lifted like a hot air balloon by heat, it will come crashing down and can create 50-mile-an-hour winds, not gusts, 50-mile-an-hour winds for up to 10 minutes. So that can absolutely wreak havoc on all the crews that are out there and all the structures that, aside from 50-mile-an-hour winds, we thought they were safe. Now we've got 50-mile-an-hour gusts, and all bets are off.
The bootleg fire has charred more than 227,000 acres since erupting on July 6th, about 250 miles south of Portland. The total area impacted exceeds the landmass of New York City. Other states hit hard by the latest spate of wildfires include Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. The situation represents an unusually busy start to the annual fire season, coming amid extremely dry conditions and record-breaking heat that has baked much of the West in recent weeks.
Atlanta police are warning drivers about a possible scooter rider scam. Let's take a look at what a surveillance camera caught at a street corner.
Here, a scooter rider first checks their surroundings and locates a target. Later, they bump the car from behind. They fake an injury to get you to come check on them. Then someone else hops into your driver's seat and drives away. Police are telling drivers to stay in their car and lock their doors if they feel unsafe. Immediately call 911, then wait until police arrive to assess the damage or check on the scooter rider. Police say most accidents are real, but drivers should be on the lookout for these bump and carjack scams.
A bridge over a highway in southern Georgia was demolished early Friday morning. The bridge was damaged after a truck slammed into it Thursday, causing the bridge to shift a frightening 6 feet. It happened in Truitland County, which is about 150 miles south of Atlanta. The crash shut down Interstate 16 in both directions. The Georgia Department of Transportation is working to reopen one lane in the east and westbound lanes by Monday. Authorities hope to reopen all lanes by the end of next week, but it's unclear how long it will take to replace the bridge. And another problem for Boeing 737 today. This time, it's a switch that controls cabin air pressure. The Federal Aviation Authority wants inspections on over 2,500 planes in the U.S. and 9,300 jets worldwide. It says the failure could prevent the altitude warning system from activating if the cabin is over 10,000 feet in the air. And at that point, oxygen levels could become dangerously low. But the Thursday order is not grounding the planes right away. The mandate requires airlines to test the switches and replace them as needed. The FAA notes the issues are unrelated to any problems with the Boeing 737 MAX flight control system, which led to 2 crashes that killed more than 300 people. The longest-running North American auto show has reopened in Chicago. Attendees happy to see old friends and take in the new car smell after a postponed event last year. NTD's Andrew Darren has the story.
July 15th saw the reopening of this year's Chicago Auto Show. In the venue's first major live event since the lockdown, car enthusiasts of all kinds came to appreciate, take rides in, and buy the wide variety of automobiles.
But smaller, yeah. We were just happy that they had one this year. You know, with COVID last year, it was a shame they couldn't do it, but I'm glad that they're doing it this year.
Some people come to the show to see their favorite brands and models.
I just wanted to look at the Mach-E because I hadn't seen it before. I've seen pictures of it. So other than that, just saw the Ford lineup and see what they have this year. You come here for it because I buy a lot of Ford products. Just the enthusiasm of new vehicles and the smell of it.
Other buyers have their minds set on something specific.
Because I'm going around, I'm looking to buy one, so I want to get seated in one, see the feel of it, and that's what I'm interested in. I've targeted this car. I like something robust. I like something that's dependable. I have to see if my wife's going to find it stylish enough.
Some come to see advances in this year's models.
I think it's cool to see, the new technology because I'm going to be in the field when all this stuff is sort of being mainstream. It's definitely interesting to see a lot of the new stuff that they're adding, like digital clusters and, hybrid engines and all that.
Spectators can also go for a ride on the test tracks.
I enjoyed it. It was my first time doing the test drive track, and it was a very fun experience. I mean, it was first time ever sitting in that big of a car, seeing what it can do. The stability was my fun part.
They let you see all different types of cars. There's not much that they don't let you look at or see. The test driving is obviously a lot. It keeps getting better every year.
The auto show runs until Monday, July 19th at Chicago's McCormick Place.
And coming up, California's special general election is less than a month away. Members of the Republican Party joined a panel discussion last night as the race continues to recall Governor Gavin Newsom. And what used to be a booming industry on the West Coast is now left only to the most dedicated. This fisherman and his crew are carrying on a family trade despite tides of industry regulations. That and more when we return.
The wait is finally over. Shen Yun returns to the stage with an all-new production filled with beauty, majesty, and a powerful message of hope. Discover the lost culture of ancient China. Discover this season, Shen Yun 2021.
Coming to the Palace Theater, July 24th and 25th. Tickets at shenyun.com/Stanford 888-90-SHOWS.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit
MakeMyPillow.com.
Parents and grandparents, do your kids understand the dangers of socialism and how they can help stop it? Their schools will never teach them, but Mike Huckabee wants to help by sending the Kids Guide to Fighting Socialism free for a limited time. This important gift will help kids learn why socialism is bad for America and how they can help fight back. It's part of a new gift bundle that includes a free magazine and video lesson too. To learn more, just visit kidsfightsocialism.com. That's kidsfightsocialism.com.
In less than a month, Californians will vote in the special general election for California governor. 8 Republican candidates on the ballot joined a panel discussion last night in Orange County. NTD's Brendan Dre gives us a look inside the forum.
Who will be California's next governor? That is the question many of the state's residents are asking. As the gubernatorial special election day draws closer, a handful of Republican candidates held a panel discussion here at the Yorba Linda Community Center to discuss their campaigns and how they plan on changing California if, in fact, Governor Gavin Newsom is recalled on September 14th.
I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who has built what is the greatest citizens movement in California.
California residents filled the community center on Thursday night. The 2-hour discussion panel hosted 8 Republican candidates arguing the necessity of recalling Newsom.
He's not for we the people, all right? And when you're hired by an employer and you don't do your job, you get warned, and if you don't do it, what happens? You get fired.
Each candidate was given 1-minute blocks to answer questions by the moderator about how they will handle the pandemic, wildfires, homelessness, and a declining population.
We need to deregulate California and bring business back, lower our taxes, and make California affordable.
School choice was another widely discussed topic during the forum. Many of the candidates say California residents are fleeing the state because the public education system is failing. California ranks number 48 in the United States. Rhonda Fearon, a former Democrat and public educator, says she's running for governor to stop overreach and socialism from ruling the future generations.
We actually need to bring back church back into our schools. We need to bring God back into our lives. We need to have school choice.
The Democratic Party currently holds supermajorities in both houses of the California state legislature. If the recall is successful, a potential Republican governor would still face difficulties running the executive branch. Anthony Trimino, who won the popular vote for the discussion panel, says he plans to collaborate and, if necessary, use leverage against the Democrats to comply with the residents' needs.
Even though it's a blue state, I believe there are more of us than them, but we haven't been provoked up until now.
Other candidates in the discussion panel included Jenny Ray LaRue, Sarah Stevens, and former Republican Congressman Doug Osee. 71 other candidates are currently on the special general election ballot for governor of California. Brandon Dre, NTD News, Los Angeles.
California is pushing back its schedule to implement the proposed and controversial math curriculum. Hundreds of educators and professionals signed an open letter criticizing it. Here's NTD's Eileen Ang with more details.
On Wednesday, the California Department of Education announced it will be postponing the new math framework after strong opposition from professionals. As of Thursday, 500 current and former STEM leaders, educators, business executives, and venture capitalists signed an open letter denouncing the new math curriculum, saying it would demathematize math.
Lots of stuff about ethnic issues and things like this that were sort of intruding into math and turning math into kind of propaganda and indoctrination rather than calculation and theorems and things like this. And so I think really this is out of place. It's alien to mathematics.
The purpose of the new math framework aims to keep students learning at the same level in the name of equity. However, opponents say it would discourage students of minorities and those who want to advance ahead.
Phil has a heavy word problem, and then perhaps laden down on top of that heavy word problem is political issues and tasks and need to understand this and that. You know, you have that extra burden that problems that were almost entirely numerical, you would have a better shot at success. And I don't see any reason why we should be plaguing a child like that who has enough challenges.
An email statement from Joel Haas, a distinguished professor of mathematics at UC Davis, ridiculed the new framework. He says it rejects educational methods for teaching mathematics that evolved from thousands of years of trial and experience, and advocates for the replacement by poorly reasoned proposals supported by dubious social science.
Some decent professional level of mathematics is a requirement for everyone. But the people who move humanity forward, there are 1 in 100 million people like Isaac Newton, like Gauss, like Archimedes, and these people should be identified early on by the system and given the nourishing environment they deserve, just like gifted athletes are.
You don't mix teaching mathematics with any other agenda. So of course we draw the context from the world around us. That's what mathematics is about. But no, if you want to teach social justice, it should be done in a different classroom.
The forum agreed that the proposed framework should be replaced with something else, or be simply left alone for now. A spokesperson for the California Department of Education told the Epoch Times via email on Thursday the math framework development timeline from 2019 is out of date and needs to be adjusted to allow for completion of edits directed by the Instructional Quality Commission. A final action for the math framework has been postponed from this November to May 2022. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
California lawmakers on Thursday approved the first state-funded basic income plan in the U.S. The $35 million plan will provide monthly cash payments to qualified people with no strings attached. Opponents say the program undermines incentives to work.
In a bipartisan move, California state lawmakers unanimously approved a $35 million basic income plan, an idea also known as guaranteed income or universal income. The plan will provide cash payments capped at $1,000 per month to qualifying pregnant women and young adults who age out of the foster care system.
These are our most vulnerable children, and this bill takes a huge step to stabilizing their lives and to ensure that their families are taken care of.
There will be no stipulation on how recipients can spend the money. Proponents claim that the plan will ease income inequality, particularly in communities of color.
When we talk about a guaranteed basic income pilot, we're talking in the range of $500 a month, maybe $1,000 at the max that such people would receive, which certainly, as we know, with the cost of living in California, would not be adequate to fully support yourself.
The newly approved plan will be paid for by California taxpayers and will set a precedent for the rest of the nation. The State Department of Social Services will decide who gets funding. Local officials will determine how much each qualified person gets paid. Currently, there is no end date for how long qualifying individuals will be receiving the guaranteed payments. Republican Assemblyman Vince Fong voiced his concern but didn't participate in the final vote.
This measure, however, includes a universal income pilot program, a concept that could undermine incentives to work and increase dependence on government. We should be pushing policies that encourage the value of work. Guaranteed income doesn't provide the job training and skills needed for upward mobility.
The vote came on the same day millions of parents began receiving their first check of the federal child tax credit.
One fisherman and his crew used to serve thousands of people in San Francisco, but fishing regulations made him leave the city. Today, he is one of the few remaining ones in his craft. NTD's David Lam has the story.
We're at the port of Redwood City, and to my left, there's the Pioneer boat, and locals are lining up to buy fresh fish from it. The captain who's cutting the fish is a third-generation fisherman who learned the family trade from his grandfather.
Joe Panisi started fishing in California when he was 7 years old. He bought his boat named the Pioneer in 2000 and launched Pioneer Seafoods.
You know, there's no more fishing industry like there used to be years ago, where a young man would grow up fishing with his father, and then, you know, he would train his kids and all. That's all gone now.
This week, they spent nearly 2 days out at sea and started unloading fish last night from 8 p.m. to 3 in the morning. His crew fishes the deep sea between 1,000 to 3,500 feet.
When you go deeper, the fish become more firm because they have to swim against stronger tide, more muscle, and they feed better, a lot more food.
He says nowadays, with the government-required permits and regulations, the fishing industry was hit hard, especially deep-sea bottom fishing.
But that's why we're the last federal groundfish boat in all of San Francisco, and there used to be a large fleet, you know. So my grandfather started fishing out here in the early 1900s.
He says each fishing trip costs him about $16,000.
And I have to give 7% of the gross income of this boat. So when you add up how much money I'm paying the federal government for each fishing trip, it's thousands and thousands of dollars that I have to pay before I even leave the dock, not including fuel and ice and all the other bills, you know.
But seeing customers come back is what keeps him going. He says it's priceless to see the reaction when they try fresh fish for the first time. One customer told NTD she tries to buy fish directly here every week. Panisi's 19-year-old son drives from the city of Chico to help, which is about a 3.5-hour drive.
I didn't personally like fishing, like being out there, being seasick and all this. But the only reason why I do is to go hang out with him. And, spend time with him. It made me happy.
Panisi works with environmental-friendly organizations and tries to fish sustainably. They release small fishes back to the ocean. He plans to bring his fish to San Francisco's Chinatown in the future. David Lam, NTD News, California.
Up next, 7 more Chinese officials are having their American assets frozen. The U.S. is sanctioning them for cracking down on Hong Kong's democracy. And a record number of F-22 stealth fighter jets. The U.S. is sending over 24 of them to an exercise in the Western Pacific. Find out more here in NTD News. The Biden administration announced sanctions on 7 Chinese officials today. That's over their role in cracking down on democracy in Hong Kong.
The 7 sanctioned officials are all deputy directors at the Chinese regime's Hong Kong liaison office. Beijing uses the office to arrange its policies in Hong Kong. Their U.S. assets will be frozen, and they will be denied entry into the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement that Chinese officials have systematically undermined Hong Kong's democratic institutions, delayed elections, disqualified elected lawmakers from office, and forced officials to take loyalty oaths to keep their jobs. Since the protests began in 2019, local authorities have arrested thousands for speaking out against government policies with which they disagreed. And he added, "Today, we send a clear message that the United States resolutely stands with Hong Kongers." The Treasury Department posted the sanctions. The Departments of State, Commerce, and Homeland Security joined in and issued a separate business advisory. They warned companies about the risks of helping Beijing build up its electronic surveillance system or giving their data to Chinese authorities. The advisory also said individuals and businesses may face consequences if they deal with sanctioned individuals. The U.S. government seems to be concerned about the impact that Hong Kong's national security law has on international companies. Critics say Beijing implemented that law last year to crack down on pro-democracy activists and press freedom. The current administration announced the sanctions just over a year after then-President Trump ended Hong Kong's special status. The U.S. has already sanctioned other senior Hong Kong officials, including Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam and senior police officers. That's for their roles in curtailing political freedoms. On the other fronts, tensions between the U.S. and China also seem to rise. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman is preparing a visit to Japan, South Korea, and Mongolia next week. China is not on the list. A senior State Department official said they're still talking with Beijing over whether Sherman would visit China. Earlier this week, the U.S. also upgraded its warnings to businesses dealing with China's Xinjiang region. That's over forced labor and human rights abuses there.
A documentary from Hong Kong was a surprise addition to this year's lineup at the Cannes Film Festival. It's shining a spotlight on Hong Kong's 2019 pro-democracy movement. Lucy Fielder has more.
A documentary by Hong Kong filmmaker Kiki Chow was a surprise addition to this year's lineup at the Cannes Film Festival. These stills are from Revolution of Our Times, which chronicles the 2019 pro-democracy movement and shines a light on protesters' stories and their clashes with police. China introduced a sweeping national security law a year ago to crack down on what it deems subversion, secessionism, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. Chow turned activist in 2019 and was inspired to get filming when he saw city workers like cleaners engage in small acts of resistance. He hopes the movie will help the movement live on. Reuters caught up with him in Hong Kong in June.
I'm a Hong Konger. I'm also a film director. What I have is my camera. I wanted to be involved in this movement. As long as I have a talent, I have a place in this movement. My identity gives me a sense of responsibility. I hope I can show people that Hong Kongers who work in the film industry are not absent from the movement.
The Hong Kong government recently brought in guidelines allowing authorities to censor films on the basis of safeguarding national security. Cinemas, universities and art galleries have cancelled screenings or exhibitions of protest-related works. Chow said he worked freely on the documentary, doing his best not to think about the red lines.
During production, it wasn't just my own fear I had to face. The most difficult thing was that I had to deal with other people's fears, including those from news outlets, independent journalists, and online media. Many people are facing struggles of their own. After the national security law was put in place, many people refused to let me use their footage.
Cannes organisers said they kept the screening under wraps, partly because the film wasn't finished until the last minute, but early clips had piqued their interest. Festival director Thierry Frémaux said Cannes was proud to put Revolution of Our Times forward. It showed how cinema can shine a light on important moments in world news.
The U.S. Air Force is sending over 24 powerful F-22 stealth fighter jets to the Western Pacific. That's an unprecedented scale. Many see this as a clear signal to China. And meanwhile, China is having an armed drill close to Taiwan.
Around 25 F-22 Raptor stealth fighter jets will be joining a U.S.-led military exercise in the Western Pacific. Commander of the U.S. Pacific Air Forces, General Ken Wilsbach, tells CNN that we have never had this many Raptors deployed together in the Pacific Air Force's area of operations. Hawaii-based defense analyst Carl Schuster says this sends an immediate message to the Chinese regime. Relations are tense between the two sides over issues like Taiwan and the South China Sea. F-22 deployments usually involve only 6 to 12 aircraft. That's why, he tells CNN, the Pacific Air Force is demonstrating that it can deploy as many or more fifth-generation aircraft into the theater on short notice than China currently has in its entire inventory. And what is the Chinese military doing at the moment? Starting Friday, they will be conducting a 6-day maritime drill, around 150 miles away from Taiwan.
The Biden administration is facing intense backlash and accusations of violating the First Amendment. This is after the White House said they're working with big tech to remove online content they deem health misinformation. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki Friday doubled down on her comments on social media censorship, suggesting that if you're banned on one platform, you should be banned on all platforms.
You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there, taking faster action against harmful posts.
This comes as the Biden administration receives intense criticism for collaborating with big tech to curb what they call health misinformation online, as they seek to vaccinate more Americans. Psaki discussed the efforts Thursday, saying the administration is in regular contact with social media companies.
In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
Republican lawmakers, independent journalists, and legal professionals are raising concerns that the effort violates the First Amendment. America First Legal, or AFL, has filed Freedom of Information Acts to several government departments demanding all documents about their coordination with social media companies. Matthew Whitaker, former acting U.S. Attorney General and board member of AFL, tells NTD he's never seen this type of coordination in all his legal career.
You know, in my experience, both as a United States attorney and as an acting attorney general, I've never seen this type of coordination. We would have to go back to Lincoln suspending habeas corpus rights to think of another analogous situation where the government has trampled on Americans' constitutional rights. And so, you know, from my perspective, that this is impermissible.
Whitaker says the FOIA requests will confirm if the administration is violating the First Amendment. It all comes down to whether Facebook is being directed to remove or flag content, or whether they have a choice. The White House says they're trying to crack down on vaccine misinformation to save lives. But concerns are also being raised about who is deemed the arbiter of true information, since over the last year, there's been many discrepancies between information given by public health authorities and that given by practicing doctors and/or scientists. Facebook whistleblower Ryan Hartwig, who lifted the lid on the social media giant's alleged pattern of bias and censorship against conservatives, also told NTD he's never seen this type of government coordination with the platform.
So I did work at Facebook for 2 years as a content moderator. So, you know, we did flag posts and we flagged trends for Facebook. So Facebook gave us instructions, but never had I heard of anything where, you know, the US government was asking for that information. So it's really shocking. It actually lends a lot more weight to Trump's recent lawsuit, arguing that about the First Amendment and that the government is instructing, you know, Facebook to hand over information or to flag certain information.
Senator Josh Hawley has also sent Facebook's CEO a letter requesting answers about the company's coordination with the U.S. government.
With Shepherd Lock, you can unlock your door by touching the deadbolt. Shepherd also boosts your home's security by proactively freezing in place if anyone ever tries to tamper with your lock or break down your door. We also make it easy to manage keys without hiding them under the mat. Easily create temporary keys for house guests, neighbors, or anyone else. Installation takes less than 5 minutes. Visit shepherdlock.com to buy your Shepherd Lock today, and for a limited time, enjoy 10% off.
Get ready, world, for a whole new way to invest. Introducing the Unicorn Hunters.
We are talking about a cultural and economic shift.
A savvy group of investors whose only job is to provide an unvarnished assessment of who they think can become the next unicorn.
I am in and I'm going to invest.
We all know why we're here. We're here to meet the next unicorn opportunity.
This could be a game changer for a lot of families.
Together with you, they're on the hunt for the next unicorn.
British luxury car maker Aston Martin has unveiled a hybrid supercar. It comes as their race team competes in the British Grand Prix for the first time since 1960. NTD's Joanne Robson brings us the story.
Aston Martin unveiled a striking new hybrid car on Thursday named the Valhalla.
It's all about battery technology, performance battery technology. It's all about, you know, how you deploy the electric performance. And I think we are on a good path at Aston Martin for doing so.
The partly electric-powered car was revealed at their racing team's headquarters in Silverstone, ahead of the British Grand Prix this Sunday. It's the first time Aston Martin will compete in Britain's premier motor race in 61 years. CEO Tobias Mowers says they are on a good path in developing hybrid technology. The Valhalla can drive up to 15 miles in electric-only mode, a distance Mowers believes will become industry standard for performance cars. It's powered by a 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8 engine with a top speed of 217 miles per hour. Aston Martin have yet to reveal the car's cost. Joanne Robson, NTD News.
And an exhibition at Versailles showcases beautiful drawings from the castle collection. It features sketches inspired by divine beauty, which acted as the base work for the palace's decor. NTD's David Vives has the story.
Versailles is the most visited palace in France. Its charm may be its exquisite art and architecture. The new drawing exhibition opened in June and will last until October 3rd. It showcases some 100 works out of the 500 drawings acquired by the palace between 2000 and 2020. Many served as the groundwork for the palace's stunning art and decor. The exhibition even brings out pieces that are usually kept away from the public eye.
Here we have a rare picture of the young Louis XIV. He was not known as the Sun King at the time. He's a young man about to be married to Marie-Thérèse.
And since the royals commissioned the architecture and art, visitors are able to get a glimpse into their thought process.
This is an exceptional album ordered by Queen Marie Antoinette. She wanted a small garden inspired by both English and Chinese styles. It really is a construction of the time.
One of the star pieces shows an angelic face. The beautiful drawing was made by François Lemoine as a preparatory sketch for the alcoholist's room. This scene represents the Greek hero who went through a series of tribulations before getting divine standing.
L'amour de la vertu.
This is the love of virtue. This is an allegory describing a man's elevation above himself. The love of virtue drives Hercules to Mount Olympus, or the heavens. This is where Jupiter marries him to the goddess of youth, Hebe, and grants him status as a demigod.
Versailles decor mostly represent divine scenes and allegorical figures like virtue, justice, love. According to Maisonnier, the 142 figures painted by Lemoine were first painted on canvas before being stuck onto the ceiling, and it's considered to be on par with masterpieces by Italian Renaissance painters. More than 100 years after the Italian Renaissance, the French worked hard to develop their own artistic style, and Louis XIV supported artists in their endeavors. Through these pieces, we see how French art was created and matured, all inspired by beauty and the divine. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
The fifth installment of the Indiana Jones series is set to be released in July 2022, and it looks like Jones has a new friend joining his next adventure.
The Spanish star of The Mask of Zorro, Antonio Banderas, will be part of the next Indiana Jones movie. The film is directed by James Mangold and executive produced by famed director Steven Spielberg. The title and plot are unknown as of now. Harrison Ford has been playing the titular character Indiana since Raider of the Lost Ark in 1984. And in June, the almost 80-year-old actor injured his shoulder while rehearsing for a fight scene in the new movie. Ford's big screen return was originally scheduled for release in 2019, but has been pushed back multiple times. On the other hand, Banderas has had a career spanning more than 100 movies, including the action-adventure The Expendables 3, where he co-starred with Ford in 2014. In 2020, the Malaga-born star was nominated for an Academy Award as Best Actor. The Indiana Jones franchise was created by filmmaker George Lucas, and it has grossed nearly $2 billion at the world box office with 4 films and amassed a global fan base. Indiana Jones 5 comes nearly 14 years after the last movie, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
And that's all for this week. Have a great weekend. I'm Evelyn Lee.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.